What if the winner of the AI chip race isn't the company with the fastest chip, but the one that doesn't need permission to exist? In 2022, China was cut off from advanced semiconductor technology, banned from accessing the chips that power artificial intelligence. The assumption was simple. Without Western technology, China's AI ambitions would crumble. Yet, something unexpected happened. AI development in China didn't slow down. It accelerated. The chip war is transforming from a technology race into a sovereignty battle, and the rules just changed in ways Washington never anticipated. The story begins in 2019, when the United States blacklisted Huawei, China's most ambitious tech giant. Access to advanced chip-making tools was severed. NVIDIA and TSMC were ordered to cease collaboration with Chinese firms. Then, in 2022, the restrictions tightened further. NVIDIA was banned from exporting its A100 and H100 chips to China, the very processors that had become the backbone of modern artificial intelligence. The goal was clear: starve China's AI sector of the components it needed to compete. Industry experts predicted China would fall years, perhaps decades, behind in the global race for AI supremacy. But, behind closed doors, a different strategy was already in motion. When you can't buy the best technology, you're forced to build your own. Instead of collapse, the sanctions triggered forced self-reliance. The Huawei and SMIC partnership intensified. SMIC, China's leading semiconductor manufacturer, became the cornerstone of a domestic chip ecosystem. The Chinese government poured billions of dollars into developing alternatives to Western technology. Every restriction became a blueprint for what needed to be replicated domestically. Fast forward to 2025, and the landscape looks dramatically different. Huawei is now producing 7nm Ascend chips in partnership with SMIC. These chips deliver 60 to 80% of the performance of NVIDIA's flagship H100. They're not as powerful, certainly not cutting edge by Western standards. But here's what makes them dangerous. They're domestically controlled, politically safe, and completely sanction-proof. They don't try to beat NVIDIA in raw computational power. They're designed to replace the need for NVIDIA entirely. This represents a fundamental shift in how we measure victory in the semiconductor industry. The old metric was straightforward: TFLOPS, raw computational horsepower, the ability to process more data faster than anyone else. The new metric is something entirely different: deployability, cost efficiency, sovereignty. In a world splitting into competing tech blocks, a B+ chip you control completely beats an A+ chip that can be cut off by foreign governments. Applications like edge computing for smart cities, 5G infrastructure, surveillance networks, and distributed AI systems don't always need the absolute fastest processors. They need chips that work reliably, deploy quickly, and operate without external dependencies. Let's separate hype from reality, because the claims circulating need fact-checking. What's actually true? Huawei is genuinely producing 7nm chips domestically through SMIC. They have achieved 60 to 80% of H100 performance levels. China is building parallel software ecosystems, including the MindSpore framework designed to operate independently of Western platforms. These are verified facts, not propaganda. But the exaggerations are significant. Claims that production will reach 2 million wafers per year by 2026 are wildly optimistic. According to Morgan Stanley analysis, SMIC will produce only 18,000 AI chip wafers per month by 2027. That's approximately 216,000 per year, not 2 million. Yield rates remain catastrophically low, hovering between 20 and 30% compared to industry standards of 70% or higher. Most chips coming off Chinese production lines don't function properly. China remains critically dependent on Samsung for HBM memory, having stockpiled 13 million HBM stacks before export bans took effect. The software ecosystem, particularly MindSpore and similar platforms, remains years behind NVIDIA's CUDA in functionality and developer adoption. This isn't a technical breakthrough, It's a strategic achievement built on massive government subsidies that mask fundamental inefficiencies. China compensates for inferior technology through cheap energy from nuclear and renewable sources, direct government financial support that hides the true economic cost, and scale over quality, deploying thousands of weaker chips and clusters to match the output of fewer, more powerful Western processors. If you can't make one chip as powerful as NVIDIA's, you make 10 chips that together accomplish the same task, and you let the government pay the power bill. China has methodically replicated every link in the semiconductor supply chain. Design software has been replaced by domestic EDA tools like Empyrean and Xepic. For lithography, instead of relying on ASML's EUV machines, which remain blocked by export controls, Huawei and SMIC are refining older DUV technology and compensating through software-level optimizations. Fabrication capabilities have expanded, with SMIC ramping up 7-nanometer production and conducting experimental 5-nanometer runs. Packaging and testing are now handled by rising Chinese companies like JKET and Tongfu Microelectronics. They've built a closed-loop system, not as technologically advanced, but sufficient to survive without Western components. The implications extend far beyond China's borders. An emerging market for these chips is developing rapidly. Russia has become an obvious customer following its own technology sanctions. Iran and Pakistan are evaluating Huawei chips based on geopolitical alignment. Parts of Southeast Asia and Africa are considering them as cost-effective, politically neutral alternatives. Even some Chinese customers are choosing domestic chips over NVIDIA's deliberately weakened H20 model, which was created specifically for the Chinese market, but has disappointed users with its limited capabilities. The corporate casualties are mounting. NVIDIA lost access to what had been 25% of its data center revenue before the restrictions. The Chinese market represented billions in annual sales. The company was forced to create the H20, an inferior GPU designed to comply with export restrictions, which industry analysts widely view as an underwhelming stopgap measure. Long-term, NVIDIA faces competition from heavily subsidized alternatives in markets it once dominated. But the situation isn't one-sided. NVIDIA still dominates AI model training globally. Chinese chips remain viable primarily for inference, running already trained models, not for the cutting-edge training that creates new AI capabilities. NVIDIA's CUDA software platform maintains an unbreakable moat that will take China years, possibly decades, to replicate fully. The scorecard for success has fundamentally changed. What matters now isn't purely technical specifications. Supply chain resilience determines whether you can survive without imports during geopolitical conflicts. Political alignment dictates which technology ecosystem you're permanently locked into. National security concerns drive decisions about who controls critical infrastructure. Speed to deployment measures whether you can build and scale without requiring international permission. The chip war stopped being about who makes the fastest chip. Now it's about who makes the most independent chip, the one that can't be weaponized through export controls. America's response has been substantial but plagued by execution problems. The CHIPS and Science Act allocated $52 billion for domestic semiconductor manufacturing. Intel is constructing fabrication facilities in Ohio. TSMC is expanding operations in Arizona. Samsung is investing in Texas. All of these projects face significant delays, labor shortages driving up costs, and supply chain complications that slow construction. The world is fragmenting into competing technological blocks. Different regions will operate on different standards, using different chips, running different software platforms. Countries are being forced to choose sides, aligning with either American or Chinese technology ecosystems. Innovation is happening in parallel universes rather than through global collaboration. This raises an uncomfortable question. Are we witnessing the end of globalized technology as we've known it for the past 3 decades? Sanctions didn't stop China. They forced adaptation and accelerated the development of alternatives. The combination of adequate performance plus complete sovereignty has proven more valuable than best-in-class technology coupled with foreign dependency. The chip war has evolved from a technical competition into a geopolitical struggle where multiple players can succeed simultaneously by serving different markets with different priorities. Huawei didn't win the chip war in the traditional sense. They changed what winning means entirely. The practical implications are already visible. AI development will look fundamentally different across regions, with diverging capabilities and applications. For investors, NVIDIA remains strong but faces questions about long-term growth ceilings as markets fragment. For developers, choosing an ecosystem, CUDA versus Mindspore, has become a strategic decision with geopolitical ramifications. For citizens, technological sovereignty comes with significant trade-offs, particularly regarding government control over digital infrastructure and personal data. In 10 years, how will we evaluate this moment? Will we conclude that American chips were faster or that Chinese chips were strategically superior because they couldn't be sanctioned? The answer depends on whether you value peak performance or guaranteed access, whether you prioritize innovation speed or supply chain security. The chip war isn't ending. It's fragmenting into separate competitions with different rules, different players, and different definitions of victory. What do you think? Is technological independence worth sacrificing raw performance? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to stay updated as this technological Cold War continues to reshape our world.